You see people sitting out games to prevent injuries. They're not injured.
They have got to do something about this load management.
Early in the season, one of our questions was, would Wemby get to the 65 games?
You brought up load management. That's the reason that we're here.
I don't
think the 65-game rule belongs.
The 65, sometimes I question just whether or not that number is a little bit arbitrary.
I'm not ready to standing here saying I don't think it's working. I think it is working.
I hate the NBA 65-game rule. Or do I? So you have to play 65 games to qualify for awards, which is supposed to stop load management, but load management isn't actually the problem.
Turn on to a game, right? And then the stars are not playing.
That is the problem.
Because of load management.
No, Magic. That is definitely not the main reason stars are missing so many games. I mean, don't get me wrong, players just constantly sitting out is probably an overcorrection to the actual problem, which again is stars missing games, but the reason they're missing games isn't because they sit out, it's because the game has changed. And as far as I can tell, the biggest change is that basketball is much harder on the body today. There are other factors as well, but that is by far the biggest. A few summers ago, we actually tracked stars from different eras, and we looked at two key factors. One, how much did they move around the court? And two, how many hard plants did they have? Basically, how often did they stop or change directions quickly on a cut? For the classic players, we looked at a full game of Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. They were on screen for a little under half an hour, and in that time, Wilt took 109 steps per minute, while West took 149. Wilt, unsurprisingly, almost never had a hard plant, whereas West had 1.4 per minute. West is one of the more frequent cutters in that era in my assessment, and quadrupling Wilt's rate supports that notion. Remember, half of their movement is on defense, so there's only so much each player's offense is going to cover. Next, we looked at 90s players, Hakeem Olajuwon for a big man, Reggie Miller for a movement shooter, and Mike Jordan as an all-around guard. Hakeem's step rate was identical to Wilt's, but he more than doubled his hard plants, which makes sense because he was more active defensively and loves his shakes and spin moves. Jordan was only at 115 steps per minute, so way less than West, but more hard plants. Miller moved as much as West, but doubled his hard plants. So in the 90s, the demands of the game picked up, but this was also at a time where equipment radically improved, training improved, players flew first class instead of commercial, and so on and so on. If we look at the top 40 scorers in the league during these years, they often played 90% of possible games during Wilt and West's era. And that continued into the 90s before a dip in the middle of that decade. MJ played baseball one year, but most players were older and just playing longer, and that led to some significant injuries to Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, and so on. For our modern players, we used Anthony Davis as a big, LeBron James as our all-around star, and Steph Curry as our movement player. Again, Davis's steps weren't that much greater than prior bigs, but his hard plants spiked and matched Reggie Miller's. LeBron's hard plants were even higher at 3.2 per minute in the game we tracked, and Curry's profile was similar to Miller's. We expect more granular data to tell an identical story. Because half-court possessions are more spaced out today, then the strategy requires a ton of stopping, starting, and change of direction. Now let's revisit that graph of top 40 scorers. There was a spike back over 90% of games played in the early 2000s, but otherwise we leveled off at about 87 or 88% until the middle of the 2010s, when stars suddenly couldn't stay on the court for 85% of the games, and then 80% of their games, and now they're struggling to play 75% of the time. If you're wondering how many games 75% of an 82-game season amounts to, it's just 62 games. That's what the average top 40 scorer has played in the last 3 seasons. And that final data point is the 3 seasons we've had the 65-game rule in place, the literal low point in history. So yeah, missing games is bad for the product, it's not a fun fan experience, but Players aren't sitting out games when they're healthy, they are getting hurt more and more and more.
Michael Jordan took pride in playing 80-plus games. Kobe Bryant took pride in playing 80-plus games.
There is a level to this where a guy who plays 55 games should not win a most valuable player over a guy who plays 80 games.
Now, a common argument is that 80% of the game should be easy to play, but it isn't anymore, at least not with the way the game is played.
Do you like that 65-game rule?
I do not like that rule, and I don't agree with Adam Silver.
In 1990, 26% of the players in the league played 80 games. This year, that number is 4%. 4% of players play 80 games. Now, that's for the whole league, but some people have argued that the 65-game rule has helped stars play in more games.
But you can't quantify the guys who are playing
Right.
so that they keep in the order. Let me give you an example. Jalen Duren playing for the Pistons today. He was questionable yesterday. Part of the arithmetic on him today is, I got to get those 6 games. If it's 50-50, I'm probably going to play.
I think both Victor and Nikola Jokic, as we've talked about, are prime examples of why that rule, at least in the NBA's eyes, I would argue, has worked, because those guys are both going to play, barring injury, they're going to play over 65 games. And I think they both would not have had the rule not existed.
I'm not sure if San Antonio wanted Wemby to play more games or if they just wanted to bring him back slowly at about 15 to 22 minutes a night after his injury. But let's assume it did motivate Wemby and Jokic and a few other players to play a total of, say, 10 extra games compared to normal. That would only move a few stars up a smidge, just over the 65-game hump, but it's not close to this idealized 1990s scenario where 23 of the top 40 scorers played at least 79 games. Incentivizing 10 extra total games out of load management would move us 2% closer to our 1990 numbers. So even if Wemby played more games, the injury pandemic is still raging. Which leads us to possible solutions. A quick break from basketball to discuss today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Look, when I need to look something up online that is a little sensitive that I don't want anyone else to know, like, do I have kidney stones, I would like a VPN I can trust. Surfshark has been third-party audited to verify they don't keep your data logs, so now my internet service provider can't see I'm looking up kidney stones. I wouldn't want anyone to know I'm looking up kidney stones. So that data is not being stored or sold off to anyone. I've outsmarted the internet. With their browser extension, connection speeds are solid in plenty of locations I've tried, and they have some nice privacy tools as well, like their alternate ID. I'm reading an article the other day. It asked me for an email. Alternate ID will generate an alternate email for me, so I don't have to share a real email, and I don't get spam with messages later on about kidney stones, which I don't want anyone to know about. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you help out Thinking Basketball when you go to surfshark.com/basketball and use the code basketball at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. That's surfshark.com/basketball and the code basketball for 4 extra months. For load management, at least one idea is to make punishments harsher for teams who directly skirt injury reports. I mean, maybe there could also be stipulations about resting players on back-to-backs with some advanced notice. None of this actually addresses the actual problem of missing games. Since the style of play is an issue, we could just get rid of the three-point line and we wouldn't have a problem. But of course, no one seems to want that. The product on the floor is great, aside from some officiating issues with the traveling and the offensive fouling. But I digress. We could get back to stars playing 80 games a year if we just went back to the old style where everyone was standing around a lot, which is much easier on the body. But of course, no one wants that. So what if we reined in some of the rules? I've mentioned this before, but this gather step style of offense is relatively new and coincides with the rash of injuries we've seen. All these super sharp changes in directions put incredible stress on the body, which might be related to all these lower limb injuries. It might not be that safe to constantly start, stop, and change directions while not having to worry about dribbling. while we're here, the push-off pandemic around the leg might be a factor too. Nikola Jokic was injured from his teammate being Hulk smashed backward into his foot, and then Jamal Murray was injured on the exact same type of play later in the season. The NBA claims that injury frequencies do not change over the course of the year, thus the length of the season isn't the thing causing the injuries, but that is based on the current schedule. Maybe removing back-to-backs would limit wear and tear on the body. As far as I can tell, we don't really know, but it does seem reasonable that a 62-game schedule across the same amount of months might lead to better health outcomes in the same way that we assume a 102-game schedule across the same time period would increase injuries. Research on back-to-backs and away games suggests they do cause more injuries, which is why teams are frequently using those games to help stars recover.
5 or 6 times throughout his career, he didn't miss one game. He played in every game. We wanted to play in every game.
The idea that stars don't want to play is just unfounded. They almost always want to play, but it's exercise scientists on teams and medical staffs trying to preserve their longevity and their health for the playoffs. And that's the thing. There's a trade-off in these situations between prioritizing the regular season and prioritizing the postseason. And if we want players healthier in the playoffs, it might mean sacrificing a few appearances in the regular season. I mean, this exact same thing happened in baseball. Pitchers used to throw a ton, their arms started falling off, and teams said, maybe only pitch like every 5 days, or maybe have a pitch count. Tyrese Halliburton pushed his body to the max in the NBA Finals last year, playing with an injured leg. And traditionally, we love seeing this as sports fans. Willis Reed hobbling onto the court, or Wilt playing with a broken hand. Gutting it out is inspiring and even a little scary. But we might not love seeing Halliburton rush back from injury the year before so he could meet the 65-game requirement, basically playing hurt in a way that seemed to damage his season.
Did you feel like a sense of urgency to come back sooner than maybe?
Yeah, no question.
You did.
Yeah, what? And then not from like our medical staff, but or
no,
like
for
that,
sure.
But like from
like a $53 million incentive.
Yeah, what?
So do we want Luka and Wemby gutting it out in a few extra regular season games if it torpedoes their playoff health? To me, these are the key questions to ask if we're really trying to squeeze every ounce of juice out of a player's body.
Still not clear on chaos.
It simply deals with predictability in complex systems.
Do I actually love this rule because it's another competitive lever to follow? I mean, maybe it's fun to track who's close to elimination, and watching players suit up whenever they're questionable is exciting, even if that's just totally pure chaos and unfair and laughs in the face of history and completely devalues the game's most precious awards. I'm personally against preventing voters from using their judgment. Bill Walton winning MVP in 1978, playing only 58 games, feels like a huge deal historically, and it's important to know that his 58 games were viewed as more valuable than other players' 82 games, and frankly, those voters were justified in thinking that. And maybe the chaos gets more people tuning in. I don't know. If you're wondering, about 2/3 of the league used to play 65 games back in the 60s and 70s. That number was closer to half of the league in the 90s to, yeah, you guessed it, in the 2010s, when, again, it started to plummet. So maybe part of the issue with the 65-game rule is that no one realized they were choosing such a high games played cutoff for this era. If we go back to our 1990 scoring leaders, 65 games intuitively felt like it provided a lot of cushion. But the reality is, top scorers played this many games in 2023, they look like this in 2024, and they look like this in 2025. So 65 games aggressively straddles the line when most of the competition plays somewhere between 58 and 70. And remember, Walton won his MVP in 1978 using those norms. In 2001, Allen Iverson only played 71 games, which was slightly less than the average top 40 scorer. Harden and Giannis played 72 games back when the average top 40 scorer played just under 70. the average top 40 scorer today plays closer to 60. And sure enough, this year's top 5 MVP candidates per the latest straw poll are all going to finish with 61 to 70 games played. By fighting this battle on the awards front, the league has sacrificed the meaning and purpose of these awards. It's not a huge deal economically. The fan experience is far more important, which is why I believe the officiating issue is a big deal. And the second most important issue is probably all the replaying at the end of games for fans. But still, a large cohort of fans don't want awards artificially constrained because it diminishes those accomplishments and it makes it harder to tell the story of the season. That's why people think these votes are important. They capture Cade Cunningham's marvelous year, Luka Doncic's heater, and Victor Wembanyama's defensive dominance. So sacrificing that in exchange for a few extra regular season games, maybe, well, not actually addressing the larger problem of stars missing games, might not be worth the squeeze.
I'm not ready to standing here saying, I don't think it's working. I think it is working.
Who knows at this point, because it's got people passionately arguing, wait a minute. Wemby has a rib injury, and this race is going to go down to the wire then. This is incredible. Oh my God. Maybe this rule is working. To support this channel, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's where we have proprietary stats on teams and players throughout the year. We also have a Discord community, and you can get all of our extra video content over there, or sign up on YouTube as a member, where we also live stream the podcast. Thanks for watching all the way to the end on this one. Hope you enjoyed it and that you are having a great day.